Hello and welcome to Bree's Bestiary, where I look at some legends and folklore surrounding animals. And today we have a buggy treat for you coming up because we are going to be answering an age old question in the animal ecology community. So, here it is. Finally, we are going to find out, would a cockroach really survive the nuclear apocalypse? Cockroaches have a reputation for resilience, even when it comes to surviving nuclear bombs and radiation. But would they really outlive us all? In 2008, in the 2008 film Wall-E, depicted Earth as a post-apocalyptic wasteland with nothing on it but the abandoned remnants of human society, a forlorn trash compacting robot. The Tyler robot only living companion is a surprisingly adorable pet cockroach named Hal. Pixar nods the popular myth that cockroaches will outlive us all. Despite Hal's sympathetic portrayal, many people think cockroaches are pretty gross. Exposed to radiation, cockroaches still fare worse than the humble fruit fly. But the creepy crawlies do have a reputation for resilience, likely contributing to the belief that they could even survive a nuclear bomb and subsequent radiation exposure. Media reports have suggested that the cockroach myth stems from rumors that of the insects thriving in the aftermath of the atomic bomb of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But School of Pollution and Global Health professor Tilman Ruff, a Nobel laureate who studied the health and environmental consequences of nuclear explosions, says he has yet to see any documented evidence that there were cockroaches scuttling through the rubble. I've certainly seen photographs of injured people in Hiroshima that have lots of flies around, and you do imagine some insects would have survived. Professor Ruff says, but they would still, would have been affected, even if they appear more resilient than humans. US TV series Mythbusters tested the cockroach survival theory in 2012 when they exposed cockroaches to radioactive material. The cockroaches survived longer than humans would have, but they all died at extreme levels of radiation. The School of Bioscience professor Mark Elger says the results of the Mythbuster test are incomplete because they only look at how many days the cockroaches lived after exposure. They didn't look at the cockroach's ability to produce viable eggs, thus ensuring the continued survival of the species. There is some evidence that they seem quite resilient to gamma rays, although they are not necessarily the most resilient across insects. You could argue, Professor Elger adds, that some ants, particularly those that dig nests deep in the ground, would be more likely to survive an apocalypse than cockroaches. Previous tests of insects subjected to radiation found that cockroaches, though 6 to 15 times more resilient than humans, would still fare worse than the humble fruit fly. Professor Elger says the feral American and German species of cockroach the ones you might recognize from your kitchen nooks and crannies, have given the rest of the species a bad rap. I think our view of cockroaches is informed by our frequent interaction with the American and German cockroaches, which have spread through the world. Professor Elger says their habit of basically acting like unpaid house cleaners horrified people. There are more than 4,000 species of cockroach, however, including native Australian cockroaches marked with iridescent colors and patterns. I got some glow spot cockroaches in in here too. The glow spot cockroaches literally glow. For example, has got a lovely yellow pattern and plates of bright blue legs with little black spots. Cockroaches breed quickly, lay large numbers of eggs, and are harder to kill with chemicals than other household insects. All traits that could contribute to the popular belief that they can withstand anything, even a nuclear bomb. That's a Mardi Gras cockroach, a species of bush cockroach found in Australia with pretty patterns on it. They are quite well defended. If you try to squish a cockroach, it usually gives off an unpleasant smell and acts pretty effective deterrent for anything attempting to capture them, Professor Elgar says. They're flat, so they can escape into places you can't access easily. Cockroaches feed off detritus of other living organisms. However, so Professor Elgar's question whether they would be able to thrive without humans and other animals. For a while, they'll be able to eat dead bodies and other decaying material, but if everything else has died, eventually there won't be any food and they're not going to make much of a living, Professor Elgar says. The reality is that very little, if anything, will survive a major nuclear catastrophe. So, in the longer terms, it doesn't matter really whether you're a cockroach or not. Nuclear explosions affect living things in a range of ways, from the impact of the initial blast to the ionizing radiation released into the air. All organisms are affected by ionizing radiation because it permanently damages DNA, the complex molecule chains that determine who we are and what we're passing on to others. It knocks the electrons off atoms and changes the chemistry of things, says Professor Ruff. Low and prolonged doses of ionizing radiation can lead to diseases like cancer and increase the risk of a range of chronic conditions, particularly cardiovascular disease. High doses can kill cells. Even if an organism is less susceptible to radiation, it is part of an ecosystem that has been damaged. Nuclear explosions are also especially damaging because radioactive substances can accumulate and recycle through the environment in freshwater systems, the ocean, and the earth. They also concentrate up the food chain, so animals at the top of the food chain may contain levels of radioisotopes thousands of times higher than their environment. So even if an organism is less susceptible initially, it's still part of an ecosystem that has been damaged. The evidence from a disaster like Chernobyl is that every organism, from insects to soil bacteria and fungi to birds to mammals, would experience effects in proportions to the degree of contamination, Professor Ruff says. There's less biological abundance, less species diversity, higher rates of genetic mutation, more tumors, more malformations, more cataracts in their eyes, shorter lifespans, and reduced fertility in every biological system. In the past, scientists theorized that the more complex an organism, the more likely they were to be affected by nuclear radiations. So humans would be far worse than insects would do better. But Professor Ruff says that focusing on a single species misses the complexity of the biological environment and how we relate to one another, as well as interactions between multiple stresses at the same time. There's all sorts of factors that we have to look at. So there are environmental factors, there are chronic exposures, effects across generations, and food shortages, for example, he says. The magnitude of effects of nuclear explosions is far greater than what you might see in carefully controlled experiments, in laboratory conditions. So everything you points to the conclusion that no, cockroaches ultimately wouldn't survive a nuclear apocalypse. So, I do want to say, because they talk about charismatic cockroaches here. Can I pull that up? I wonder, because it was entomology. Okay, and then I can look at my contributions. Where's my cockroach post? Oh, that's not entomology, that's entomology. I want entomology. Easy to mix up the two. Entomology is a fun Facebook group that Bree's part of. And I do contribute too, so I don't know. Here we go. Yeah, we're going to go through this. This is probably the most popular post I've ever posted on here, so let's go and have a look. Okay, so we are going to look at some pretty cockroaches. Look at these beautiful animals. Yeah. Is it going to let me cycle through them? It shows the cycle button, but look at this. There's some of the spotted cockroaches, the domino ones. I like these. They're emerald. Let's see, Pseudoglomerus magnifica. And then these are Pisciferius species. And Panchlora species by Arthur Acker. Eushelfordia pica. And I think we go on more in the... I thought I shared more than that. Let's see. There's a bunch that I shared. Yeah, there's a pretty one. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? A ladybird one. This person's coming here sharing some beautiful roaches. Look at all these. There's a juggalo roach. There's some blue edging. Yep. This one's a Jawa. Really cool. Anyway, yeah, so, but as cool as they are, they're not surviving a nuclear fallout. It's just not happening. It's not happening for any animal, unfortunately. So we need not drop nuclear bombs. We need to think about other organisms on our planet, and we need to remember to be kind, take care, and we'll see you next time.